Hello and welcome to the show. You're watching Tech 24. As the annual agricultural trade show is currently underway in Paris, we tell you more about the farms of the future. Let them be in containers in urban areas or at the bottom of the sea. Solutions to grow pest-free foods and satisfy the world's growing population are indeed springing in all sorts of habitats. Plus, in Test 24, we try two bicycles, the all-terrain What For Now TTG that will give you a boost, and the user-centric electric bike by the Vosges startup Moustache. Now, according to a UN report, by 2030, 20% of products consumed worldwide will come from urban farming compared to just 5% today. This revolution is driven by innovative startups like Agricole, which is vertically growing food in old shipping containers in the French capital.
It may look like an urban wasteland, but this is a site of a French farming startup. Agricole's latest outpost is in La Courneuve, a Paris suburb. Inside these containers, herbs and strawberries are growing above ground. The nutrients and lighting are all tightly controlled.
All of this uses very little energy, and it's powered by renewable sources. So this ecosystem will allow us to grow a lot more produce per meter, using less resources and cultivating more nutrient-rich food.
Both his father and grandfather were farmers. Guillaume Fourdinier created Agricole in 2015.
When you grow up in the countryside, you know what it's like to eat fresh vegetables that have taste, that are healthy, and you understand that it's local producers that do that.
The technology is confidential. Over the last 5 years, the company has raised 30 million euros to boost its development. Agricole doesn't want to replace traditional farming methods, but the 73 hectares of farming land around Paris isn't enough to provide for the city.
Of course, the aim isn't to replace traditional farming, but we have to produce 70% more food between now and 2050 to feed the planet. So we need to find solutions that complement current techniques that allow us to eat better, with more nutritional value without pesticides and more responsibly.
Today, Agricole sells around 100 boxes of strawberries a day to people in the local area of its 3 Parisian farms. And the startup is even branching out internationally, with an urban farm in Dubai growing strawberries.
And to talk more about this, we're now going to turn to our tech expert, Dan and Jake Hadalkar. Hello, Dan.
Hello, Julia.
Now, another similar project is coming to life in the center of Paris, or at least in the French capital. 14,000 square meter farm that's going to be on a rooftop of one of the biggest venues.
Well, yes, the venue is the same where the agricultural trade show is currently happening. And this rooftop farm will be Europe's biggest. As you mentioned, it occupies a mammoth area of 14,000 square meters. And it's called Urban Nature, and it's an indicator of what the future of urban ecosystem could be. So, for example, you farm close to a city and you bring the produce closer to the customers. Number of techniques have been used to build this farm, including vertical farming. At its peak, or at the peak season, farmers will be able to generate fruits and vegetables amounting to 1 ton, and they will be using techniques that involves organic farming, which means they won't be using pesticides.
Thank you very much. Now, as land-based agriculture comes under threat from rising temperatures and extreme weather events, could the sea be the future of farming? Well, that's at least what Brent Smith, a former fisherman turned sustainable shellfish and seaweed farmer, believes. He's often hailed as the pioneer of ocean farming, as his company is operating one of the first sustainable 3D ocean farms in the United States. Well, joining me from New Haven, Connecticut, is Brent Smith. You're the founder of Green Wave, but also the author of Eat Like a Fish. Thank you so much indeed for being with us today.
It's an honor to be here.
So tell us, how did you come up with the idea of ocean farming in the first place?
Yeah, so I, born and raised a commercial fisherman in Canada and fished the globe. But the trouble was I was fishing at the height of industrialized fishing. And eventually the stocks disappeared. And so then I had to remake myself as an ocean farmer. The issue was not growing what people wanted to eat, like salmon, but asking the ocean, what do you want us to grow? What makes sense? And when you ask the ocean that, it says, why don't you grow things that don't swim away and you don't have to feed? And so that's shellfish and seaweeds. And what I did was create a polyculture system, growing as many different species in a 20-acre area as possible.
Now, precisely, what exactly is 3D ocean farming? How does it work? And how much is it set to boost food production worldwide?
Yeah, so imagine an underwater garden. You know, the good thing about growing underwater is you can't really see the farm. But below we have these horizontal lines, and we grow our seaweed vertically downwards. Next to that are mussels and mussel socks and scallops. And then down below we have oysters and clams. And that idea of using the entire water column, which allows us to grow incredible amounts of food with a small footprint. The World Bank did a study and said if we were to farm less than 5% of U.S. waters, we'd create the protein equivalent of 3 trillion hamburgers. So this is since the ocean is this beautiful open space, it's an opportunity to really grow food at volume in order to meet the demands of both climate change and overpopulation.
Now, you say that these ocean farms are also an incredible example of how to build a so-called blue-green economy in the era of climate change. You've just touched up on it, but what exactly do you mean by that?
Yeah, so I'm not a traditional environmentalist. You know, I grew up hunting things for a living. But what we learned in the era of climate change is there will be no jobs on a dead planet. There will be no food on a dead planet. So if I want to work on the water, I need to become a steward of the ocean. And the beautiful thing about seaweed and shellfish is it breathes life back into our oceans. So seaweeds soak up 5 times more carbon than land-based plants. Oysters filter out nitrogen. The farms function as artificial reefs. So suddenly, as a fisherman turned farmer, I'm no longer a pillager, but working with the sea to bring it back to life. And the key here is, how do we shift an entire workforce into an army of people trying to address climate change? So we, as just a regular old fisherman, I'm now on the front lines of trying to capture carbon, draw down while feeding the planet. And I think that's what we need to do with coal workers and fishermen and farmers alike.
Brent Smith, thank you very much indeed for speaking to us.
It's an honor. Thanks so much.
Now, Dan, there are other such incredible and inspiring projects that are springing up throughout the world. I'm thinking about the Italian project called Nemos Garden. It's pretty incredible when you see the pictures.
Well, yes, it's located off the coast of Noli in northern Italy, and it essentially consists of air-filled pods that are anchored to the sea floor. These pods normally are situated between 15 to 35 feet under the sea floor. And the big advantage of having this system is that there's a constant temperature, so the plants, they grow in ambient conditions, plus there's no danger of parasites as well. At the same time, as you can see, the top half of these pods are filled with air, but the bottom there's the seawater as well. So this seawater, there's desalination of the seawater, so it evaporates and then it condenses in those pods, and those droplets are then fed into these plants, which are placed in those pods. And
what kind of vegetables or fruits can we actually grow, or herbs, from what I remember?
Yeah, the company has already grown basil, they have already grown strawberries, and it's a vast network. So there's this central tower in the middle which connects all these pods and supplies nutrients to it. It also supplies water, and this also has webcams, so it can constantly monitor what's going on inside the pods and different sensors as well.
Thank you very much. We're going to move on now to Test 24. The sector is booming as cities are going green. Many French startups are competing to bring the most accessible and performance-driven bikes to the market. Dan, you actually tried both of them. We're going to start with this bike. It's called, from at least the company Moustache, a very French name, and it's from the Vosges region, from the city of Épinal.
Well, yes, it's a beautiful bike. It has that premium feel to it, and it's called Samedi 27 or Saturday 27. That's because it can be used for a little ride in the countryside. It has 80mm fork, so it has very good shock absorbers. And it can also be used for city rides. The philosophy of the bike, or the design philosophy of the bike, is centered around the motor and the battery, which lends a better balance to this bike. Otherwise, you have standard features like there are 3 modes of power. Then you have some other equipments, like you have a carrier, you have a bag next to it. So yeah, it's a multi-purpose bike, but the one on my right uses a completely different philosophy. It's by the French startup What For Now. They are based in Annecy. And as you can see, even design-wise, it looks very, very sporty, very outdoorish kind of a bike. Yeah, and the double T in What For Now stands for twin transmission. So here you have, in the case of Moustache, you have the electric transmission, which is continuous. But here you have the other transmission, which provides you power on demand or boost on demand. So I'll just show a little demonstration. On the right, on the other side, you have the normal mechanical transmission. And here, as you can see, the one provided by the Kevlar belt is the electric boost. The moment I press this tiny lever, you get this massive torque, and it's comparable to a torque of a motorcycle, and it can help you fly to 25 kilometers per hour, which is the maximum limit for an electric bike, under 3 seconds.
And you can use it in town or in the countryside. Thank you very much indeed for that, Dhananjay Khatalkar there. That brings us to the end of this week's edition of Tech 24, but you can watch it again on our website, france24.com. See you very soon.